Imagine millions of Americans already struggling, facing the threat of losing their food assistance. That's the reality at the heart of the SNAP funding battle. The Trump administration's handling of SNAP, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, funding has sparked a legal showdown, and the stakes couldn't be higher. Local governments and nonprofits are fighting tooth and nail to ensure that vital SNAP benefits continue uninterrupted. But the administration is pushing back, arguing that the money is needed elsewhere. Now, a group of local governments and nonprofit organizations are urgently appealing to a higher court to uphold a previous order that mandates the Trump administration to fully fund November's SNAP benefits. This comes in response to the administration's request to the First U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals for an emergency stay of a judge's ruling. That ruling, issued on Thursday, compelled the administration to fully fund SNAP by a specific deadline. The administration's argument? They claim they need to reserve these funds for the Special Supplemental Nutrition Program for women, infants, and children, more commonly known as WIC. They even set a tight deadline for the appeals court to make its decision. But here's where it gets controversial. The core issue revolves around whether a federal judge has the authority to force the government to use $4 billion from a specific section of the Agricultural Adjustment Act Amendment of 1935 to cover November's SNAP benefits. The Trump administration contends that diverting these funds to SNAP would essentially be robbing Peter to pay Paul, jeopardizing the WIC program. They argue that if every program beneficiary could sue and demand fund transfers, it would create a chaotic and unmanageable situation, turning the federal budget into a giant shell game. Think of it like this. Imagine if you could sue the government every time you disagreed with how they allocated funds. Chaos would ensue, right? However, the groups challenging the administration aren't backing down. They argue that the government's claim of irreparable injury is baseless and disregards the significant harm that would befall millions of Americans if SNAP funding is cut. And this is the part most people miss. They point out that with $23 billion remaining in available funds, there's more than enough to adequately fund both WIC, which requires about $3 billion a month, and SNAP, which typically needs around $8.5 billion. So, is it really a matter of limited resources, or is something else at play? During a heated court hearing, Judge John J. McConnell Jr. even accused the Trump administration of withholding SNAP benefits for political reasons. Last week, Judge McConnell had already ordered the government to use emergency funds to ensure SNAP payments were made on time for November 1st. Despite this order, the administration committed to only partially funding SNAP, citing the need to protect WIC funds. This led McConnell to issue a further order on Thursday, demanding full SNAP funding by Friday. He specifically criticized President Trump for seemingly defying the court order by stating that SNAP would not be fully funded until the government shutdown ended. In their latest court filing, the Trump administration is attempting to clarify the president's statement, asserting that he was just stating a fact about the budgetary situation, not using SNAP as a bargaining chip. The administration argues that Congress needs to resolve the budget crisis. Meanwhile, they've asked the appeals court to allow the U.S. Department of Agriculture, USDA, which oversees SNAP, to continue with partial payments. They want to avoid being forced to transfer billions from another essential program without any assurance that those funds will be replenished. Interestingly, Judge McConnell himself rejected the administration's request to put his own ruling on hold. He stated that people have already gone without for too long and that delaying payments even further is simply unacceptable. This highlights the urgency and the real-world impact of this legal battle. So where do you stand on this issue? Should the courts have the power to force the government to allocate funds in specific ways? Is the administration genuinely trying to protect WIC? Or are there other motivations at play? And perhaps the most important question, how do we ensure that vulnerable populations receive the support they need during times of economic hardship and political gridlock? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's discuss.